Welcome back to the behind-the-scenes stories from Reliving Mark, Discovering Jesus in Israel. I'm Cosaert, the writer and the host of the series. In our final episode, I have two stories I want to share with you that are connected to episode 6. And they're both part of the story of Jesus that's most important, the resurrection. Episode 6 of Reliving Mark is the most important episode in the entire series. It focuses on the climactic conclusion of Mark's gospel, the crucifixion of Jesus, and the implications of the empty tomb. Without the resurrection, the story of Jesus is nothing more than just another tragic story of a charismatic and reformatory leader whose life was prematurely taken when he ran afoul of the ruling powers of his day. But if Jesus rose from the dead, as Mark and the other Gospels declare, then the nature of reality in this world has fundamentally changed. Death need no longer be feared, for Jesus is risen from the dead, and through him, he offers to us that same hope. In order to investigate Mark's claims about the resurrection, it was important for us to allow our viewers to see the archaeological evidence that sheds light on the nature of crucifixion and on Jewish burial practices in Judea that date to the time of Jesus. But doing that, however, was not easy. We had to get special permission to film for a number of places in Israel. The most difficult permission to get was for the one place that was the most important to film, the Church of the Holy Sepulcher, the location where, according to the earliest Christian traditions, Jesus was crucified, buried, and rose from the tomb. Since the Church of the Holy Sepulcher is under the care of several different Christian orders, we had to get multiple levels of approval, and that process itself took several weeks alone. Even with permission, however, filming at the Church of the Holy Sepulcher is not easy. Since it is a functioning church, there's always a large number of different religious services taking place, and those services, of course, have priority access to any part of the church. And while that is challenging enough to work around, the site is often so packed with people that it can be impossible to move around freely, let alone try to film. Since there was so much we needed to film at the Church of the Holy Sepulcher, and we wanted to avoid tourists as much as possible, we arrived at the church as soon as it opened, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we spent most of the day there. In order to maximize our time, we also decided not to film anything that required us to stand in a line for a long time. And for most of the day, that strategy worked pretty well. At the end of the day, however, there was one place where the line had never gone down, and it was the most important place to film, the tomb of Christ. We had hoped to film there as soon as they had opened that morning, but it was closed for a religious service. And when it finally opened, the line was well over 100 people long. We kept checking back all throughout the day, but the line never really got shorter. We were also hesitant to join the line, since there was no guarantee we would get in. The site might close for a religious service, or the attendant might not let you in because he thinks you're not dressed appropriately. In an act of desperation, I decided to try to cut the huge line. I walked up to the attendant and I gave him all the permission forms we had. As he looked through all our paperwork, I told him that we'd been filming at the church all day long, and we really wanted to film in the Holy Sepulcher before we finished. After carefully looking through everything, he motioned for me to step aside. At first, I assumed that he had denied our request, but he hadn't. Instead, he closed the line to the tomb of Jesus and then quickly shooed everyone out of the tomb, and then he motioned for my cameraman and me to enter the tomb. It was like the parting of the Red Sea, as we were given private access to film in the place where Christians for nearly 2,000 years have recognized as the place where Christ was buried and rose from the dead. The attendant told me to take all the time I needed, but there was one restriction. I was not allowed to pray inside the tomb. I thanked him, but I told him that there was no way I could enter the tomb of Jesus and not pray. I was a Christian. I wasn't praying because I was on camera. as though it were merely a show, I was praying as an act of worship. If I didn't pray, it'd be a sign of disrespect to my Savior. So he finally agreed to allow me to pray, and I did, as I've always done when I've entered the tomb and reflected on the resurrection of Jesus. My final story has to do with the women who came to the tomb. Not the woman who came to the tomb 2,000 years ago, but to the Jewish woman who agreed to play those roles for us in episode 6. The reenactments of the woman at the tomb play a crucial role in the series. The discovery that the stone sealing the entrance to the tomb had been rolled away, and the angelic announcement that Jesus is risen is the climax of the story. So we knew if we didn't get that scene right, the entire series would not end well. Everything depended on getting the right actors for that scene. We had found 3 young Jewish women who had agreed to help us with the scene. But on the morning that we were scheduled to begin filming, one of them called in sick. Since we wanted at least 3 women at the tomb, we asked the 2 other women if they might be able to find someone who could help us at the last second. They agreed to try, but we knew it was unlikely. When the taxi arrived with the women, we were pleasantly surprised to see that there were 3 women in the taxi. They had found someone who was willing to help us at the last second. So when they got out of the car, I gave them the forms they needed to fill out in order to be in the scene. And the 2 girls who we had talked with earlier quickly signed the forms and went to get ready. The new woman, however, was really hesitant. She was carefully reading through every single word of the contract, and she had several questions for me before she was willing to be involved in the film. It turned out that her friends had pressured her into coming, but had not told her anything about the film itself. So once I explained the nature of the film and what she had to do, she gladly agreed to sign the contract. As it turned out, she ended up being the lead actress of the scene. In fact, she had some experience, we discovered, in broadcasting, so she was very comfortable on camera and very expressive. It seemed providential to us that she had become part of our team. It probably shouldn't have surprised us, but we discovered when we were prepping them for the scene, we discovered that the women had never actually heard the story about the resurrection of Jesus before. And since they didn't know it, we had to explain it to them. And they were really interested, asking all kinds of questions about the woman at the tomb and what happened. It was such a tremendous blessing for our team to be able to share the story of the resurrection with them for the very first time, and how an angel had appeared at the tomb, telling the women, whose roles they were playing, Jesus is risen. He is not here. See the place they've laid him. And as you can see in the episode, they did a fantastic job in helping to make the story of the resurrection of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark come to life. Well, I hope you've enjoyed these behind-the-scenes stories from Reliving Mark, Discovering Jesus in Israel. I hope you'll also join me in making sure that the story of Jesus is not an untold story for anyone. I can't imagine a greater tragedy in this world than never discovering the truth of Jesus of Nazareth. May God use you, me, and Reliving Mark to help spread the good news about Jesus. So take care, God bless, and thanks for watching.